Hey, and welcome back to the podcast. We are done with the summer solo series, and quite honestly, it was for us a huge relief and benefit because, as we've said multiple times, not only are we all youth pastors, we're also all doing the ministry things, from church camps to mission trips to being home with our families over the summer while our kids are home. And so, having that as an opportunity for us to just give you brief moments and brief insights, and just different inspirational thoughts and ideas over the summer helped us be more present with our ministries and our families as well. So, with that, we are back into the school year, which means we are back into more of the group focused podcasts. And so, today, David and I are sitting down to start our theme for August. And our theme for August is just this idea of how do you set or how do you start your ministry well. Um, and so we're going to be looking at three different things over the next 3 weeks. This week, we're looking at vision casting. Next week, we're looking at building relationships. And then the week after that, we are creating a healthy rhythm for not only your students, but your leaders as well. And so today, David, we're diving into the vision casting. And before we get too far, I think a lot of times we misunderstand or misrepresent that word. What does it mean to vision cast?
Yeah, so I think it starts with understanding the overall mission of your church. I think sometimes as youth ministries, we can kind of get bogged down into this sense of what do we want our youth ministry to be? And we almost, sometimes intentionally, but most of the time unintentionally, separate our ministry from the church. And we need to remember that our ministry, the best way that I've ever heard it explained is if you imagine your church like a stool, you have your three legs of your stool. You've got your children's ministry is one leg, your youth ministry is one leg, and your adult ministry is another leg. And of course, there's so much other things, but that's kind of the core of every church structure. And if you take one of those legs and try to do your own thing, the whole stool is going to fall. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the whole church is going to fail because you're off doing your own thing. But I think it's always important to remember that we are part of a system and a church family, and that so in all that we do, we need to make sure that our vision lines up with the mission, the overall mission of our church. And so I think start there, understand what the mission of the overall church is, and then kind of zoom in a little bit to what that looks like for your youth ministry.
Yeah, and I think a shared mission or the unity behind that, not only is it going to build cohesiveness in your group, but it's going to build cohesiveness within the groups of your church. And I think that's something that is a huge thing to deal with. But then also, for specifically, for instance, my church, our mission statement is love God, love people, offer Christ. That's been our mission statement for years now. And instead of going out and adopting my own mission strategy and my own mission goal statement or anything to that nature, we just adopted what our church was already doing. Because at the end of the day, that is our goal too. And so we just made one small tweak to the church's mission statement. And we say, love God, love students, offer
Yeah.
Christ. And so with that, we have the same focus, we have the same goal. And the great thing with that is you are automatically just not having to start over from scratch. And what hopefully has already been kind of indoctrinated into your church as a mission statement is just easily kind of transferred and digested as a student ministry goal as well. And so that is the huge part of this is with the vision casting, you have to have something that is clarified, something that has an actual goal and focus. Because I think one of the things with mission statements is a lot of times we do them because they sound cool, um, and then we stop there.
Mhm.
But in all reality, I'm a firm believer that your vision or your mission statement should be something that you funnel everything that your ministry does through it. And
Yeah.
so when I look at events, when I look at our opportunities, when I look at the fun events or the ministry moments or worship nights, or if someone asks, hey, why don't we do this? Like my immediate response is, well, hey, does it love God? Does it love students? Does it offer Christ? If it doesn't fit at
Mhm.
least one, if not two or three of those, we don't do it. And so with that,
Yeah.
it should be the funnel or the lens that you're viewing your whole ministry through. And so having something that is clear, concise, and focused is super super important. And so how do you go about, say you have this, and maybe you've kind of worked and modeled your own, or you've done like I did and kind of just adopt the church's mission statement. How do you go about communicating your vision and your values clearly to not only your students but also your leaders? I feel like that's two different discussions, so let's start with your students. How do you communicate that clearly with your students?
So I like to start with number one, understanding the importance that um, having a clear and concise vision, especially for the students to grasp a hold of, can be really helpful. So I think and a lot of churches have adopted this, but having sort of a longer written out statement, but then also having a very easily repeatable, like your mission statement or your vision for your church and for your students is really easily, you know, any student can say very clearly what your church is about, what your youth group is about. You can put it on a T-shirt; it's catchy, things like that. That's super helpful in being able to. So I think number one, make sure that it is something that the students can easily remember, not watered down, but simple and to the point. So they understand this is who we are, this is what we're about, this is what we believe, and this is why. If you can answer some of those questions through your vision statement, or even a longer vision statement where you have a little bit more time to kind of talk about it, I think that's the best way to communicate that. And so, practical ways for me, and I'll get into it a little bit later. But there's 3330 model that I have used for a long time that helps me not only with students, but with parents and with our church as a whole and our church leadership, that helps us communicate who we are, what we're about, and what we're doing. And then that last component, how you can pray or partner with us as a ministry.
Yeah, and I think that I mean it's something that's really really important, and the 3330 model is pretty cool. Definitely, we'll have time for you to kind of build and go into that a little bit more later. But for the leader side of this, how does, I guess, what is the differences between how you communicate or how you cast your vision from the students to the leaders? Because leaders, I mean, I hesitate to say that leaders have more buy-in, because the goal of student ministry is to create buy-in, to create people
Mm.
passionate after searching and going after Jesus, finding their core, finding their friend group within church, and all those things. And so obviously, like the buy-in on the student side is huge, but how does that change when you cast your vision or communicate that with your volunteers, because their buy-in is different?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes down to the approach. Um, in the same way you want your leaders to step up for your students, you want your students to step up and have that buy-in, as you said. And so the way I see it is, remember, number one, remember that this is their youth group, not ours. I think sometimes when we can understand that very simple dynamic, it takes our own opinions and our own preferences for what we want it to be, and it keeps it out on the forefront that this is their youth ministry. So let's empower them to use their passions and their gifts to make a difference in a kingdom, or a difference for the kingdom right here in this. And we know from year to year, even sometimes semester to semester, our youth ministry dynamic can change depending on what students we have, what leaders we have, different things like that. So I try to approach it as a way of understanding this is what our vision is, so we can go a little bit deeper with our volunteers, because as you said, the buy-in is different. But I always try to keep it focused on our job is to empower our students, to equip them to use their gifts and their passions. So I try to do kind of in the same way that I do with our students, but with our leaders, to say, what are your specific gifts and passions, that, the things that you are um, not only gifted in, but the things that you are passionate about that will reach a student that I can't. how can we use those things through our vision? So in communicating those things, it's like, I think it always comes down to really, and we're going to talk about this a lot more next week, but it comes down into our relationships with people. If we have a good relationship with our leaders, we can better utilize the vision in them by knowing what their passions are, their gifts are, to use them in the best and most effective way. And so I just think it's really important to cast a vision utilizing their passions and gifts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And so you might be listening to this though, and you're like, well, I mean, I like vision. Yes, I get it. And I understand that like people think it's important, but like that's not for me, or like we don't operate on a vision. Like we just do this, or like we're a lot more free will and just go from thing to thing and stuff like that. But my question to you would be basically like, if your students and leaders don't know where you're going, how do you know when you've arrived?
Yeah.
And so like not only is the vision important, but it's one of those things that like if you don't have a set goal, how do you define wins? If you don't have a set goal, how do you define movement? And yes, you can say, well, we define movement by kids accepting Jesus and being baptized and sharing the gospel with others. Great, make that your mission statement.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, at the end of the day, our goal is to bring people to Jesus, have Jesus radically transform their lives, and have them share that transformation with others. I mean, it like,
Yeah.
and so with that, like you probably even have a vision statement, even if you don't think you do, but maybe just work on how you can articulate that, because there's a ton of importance with that. And the other side of it is you have to communicate it. And David touched on this a second ago, but if you don't communicate your vision and your values clearly, um, nobody knows what a win is. Nobody knows what you're trying to achieve or where you're trying to reach. And that needs to be in your curriculum and what you're teaching. That needs to be in your worship. That needs to be in everything. And you should have goals and plans for all of that. Our goal for worship is to see students engaged. We don't have a we need 75% of our students to raise their hands during worship or anything like that, because
Mhm.
that's not realistic. But we want to see our students engaged. And when we see our students engaged in worship, that can be presented in 100 different ways. And so having those different things. And so if you can't explain your vision clearly, it's probably too complicated, and you need to iron it down a little bit to make it feasible. And then the thing is with that is, if you want it to be something that sticks, you need to repeat it often. Have it on the screen at church, have it on your walls, have it on stickers or t-shirts or whatever other merchandise you do. Have opportunities for the kids to see it over and over and over and over. And then say it during your messages. Like ask the students, like prompt the students to say it. Hey, what is our goal here? Over and over and over, because repetition creates memory. And once they remember it, then they'll have the opportunity to use it and apply it in their lives as well. And then finally, use stories. Like if you have an opportunity for volunteers to share testimonies or students to share testimonies, let them first off, because that's a huge deal, not only for them personally, but also for the students that are listening to it. And then secondly, with that, like there's your opportunity to plug in a real life application of how their testimony applied to your mission statement. And so if you have a kid come up and talk about like how they came to know Jesus and how that transformed their life, you're like, hey, that's awesome. We are like that totally falls in line with our goal of X, Y, and Z, or love God, love people, offer Christ. Like that is our goal, and like this is played out in their life, and so it's super super cool. Um, but more than anything, we live in a visual society with a visual culture, and visual students. Everything is visual. So plaster that everywhere you possibly can. Social media, posters, graphics, videos, merch, whatever you can put it on, make it something that sticks out and make it something that they see repetitively over and over and over. So not only do they see it and read it, but they know what it is, and then that knowledge helps them start to apply it. which is really, really, really cool.
I would say another cool thing. Sorry,
No, you're good.
another cool thing that I've seen that just made me think about it as you were talking about testimonies and stuff. There was a moment through one of our it was like a camp debrief that we were doing, just an opportunity to get the students sharing what God was doing in their life, and even for those that didn't go to camp, to be able to talk about their summer and to also kind of learn from the students that did get to go. It ended up being a really cool moment. But we had talked about something, and one of our students had brought up something that I had shared at one of our camp breakouts, and it was something as simple as, and it was so off the cuff that I didn't think about it, but it was like being like a duck. You know, a duck, when they swim on the surface of a pond, they seem so cool, calm, and collected, but underneath, they're they're what, their fins, whatever it is,
And kicking.
they're kicking like crazy, right? And it's like so chaotic under the surface, but everything seems so cool and calm and collected. And so I asked a question. I was like, "What's under the surface?" And that just blew some minds, and it was a really cool thing. And so some of our students were like, I really like that. Can we go deeper into like what does that mean from a spiritual, physical, mental kind of thing?" And so it turned into this whole conversation, and the students were really enjoying it. And so the next week they were like, "Hey, I want to talk about it a little bit more." A very organic thing became, basically, now we've got 4 students that are in a contest to design our next student t-shirt, and it's going to have the duck in the water, and basically what's below the surface. And it got them really excited about it. And so sometimes something as simple as that, along the idea of what are we trying to accomplish as a student ministry, can be such a cool organic moment. And again, it allowed those students to get excited about something and then share it and use it. And then now when the students wear the t-shirt, they can be like, "Hey, this is what it means to me." And it, again, is another way. Now it's kind of a subset of that vision, but it's a cool way for the students to get to have a part of that. And at the end of the day, it's all about equipping our students.
Yeah, no, you doing that just totally made me think of an idea that I had to jot down so I didn't forget about it
Love
at the end of this
it.
podcast. But it's one of those things, like it's super important. So anytime you can find those application moments to where you can take what you've been telling them about your vision or about the focus of your ministry, and using that or utilizing that in a way that works is really, really important. And so with our leaders, the way that we kind of communicate our vision and communicate our goals is we just clarify what a win is. And so we say,
Yeah.
like, we win, and I stole this from Kenny and L. Campbell forever ago. They run stuff you can use and grow curriculum and stuff like that. But it was one of the resources that they gave out a while ago. And it was just, they said, and I loved the way that they articulated it. It said, "We win when a student takes a step towards their faith." And so, anytime, any step, any opportunity for them to take a step forward in their faith, that's a celebration and that's a win for us. And so, that might be hearing about Jesus for the first time. That might be um, making a step into becoming more active in the youth group. That might be accepting Jesus. That might be getting baptized. That might be stepping up as a leader. That might be sharing their faith with other people. Like, there's so many different ways that you can celebrate that. And so having those opportunities and those goals, that you can just be like, hey, like, um, and share with your leaders on just this dynamic of like, hey, like, tell us about your win last week. And having the volunteers be able to share the things that are going on in their small groups or in their different ministries is super, super important. And it just gives, once again, that community alignment of, hey, we're all in this together. We're all focused on the same goal. And so I had just a few ideas for practical ways to keep that vision alive after your kickoff service. Because a lot of times we get out there and we say, hey, here's our goal, and then we don't touch on it again. And so here's at least some practical ways that you can go about taking your vision past your kickoff. I would say check in with your leaders. Have your leaders check in with each other. Some groups makes this easier than others. And in my last youth ministry, my leaders all showed up early. And so we did like a 5 or 10 minute check in to where we got to talk about the successes and the fails of the week. In the like after we are done with youth, it works a little better for us this time. But we typically try to check in on our leaders and see how the group went, see if there was anything that happened, and just give them opportunities to celebrate their successes or celebrate wins. And then also check in with students. Check in with students that are tied to the vision. Like I said, have that plastered all over your youth group, and then challenge them to do it. If like I said, for ours is love God, love students, offer Christ. And so with that, just be like, hey, hey, how have you loved on students this week? Well, I invited my friend to church. That's awesome. Great. Love that you did that. Hopefully they get to come. If they do, make sure that you come and introduce them to me, kind of thing like that.
Yeah.
And then also, like I said, through testimonies and stuff like that, you can celebrate through stories of how the vision is playing out in your group. And so that can be through social media posts or through video testimonies. That can be from people sharing on the stage. And so with the high school, one of the things that we do is we allow our high school to teach. And so our high school step into different series regularly, and they get to contribute to not only writing the lessons, but also incorporating their testimonies and their stories into the lessons, which is really, really cool. And that's something that we've done for years now, and we're continuing to do because of the power and the impact that that has. And then cast a vision night. Do something crazy that's just an opportunity for you to get the vision out there more. Like I said, maybe that's an opportunity for you to pass out T-shirts. Maybe that's an opportunity for you to just do a short message on that subject or something to that nature. We do a overall theme, like I said, or overall vision, which is love God, love students, offer Christ. But then we also have an annual vision. And so our focus for this year of 2025 has been, can I pray? Looking into James chapter 5. And we basically have used that as our theme for the whole year. And so our t-shirts that are coming out here in the next week or two literally have "Can I Pray" on them. And so our t-shirt articulates our annual theme every single year. And so we have different opportunities for that. And we try to utilize different opportunities for that theme to be incorporated in our students' lives as well. And that's what I wrote down just a second ago when you were talking. I was like, ooh, that's an idea. So I appreciate that. Thank you. But how else do you, what are some other practical ideas if you have any, David, or just elaborate on some that I shared?
Yeah, man, you talked about writing things down. I wrote down everything you said because it's all good stuff. And, it's also a good reminder, like, no matter how long you're in ministry, like, I've shared a lot on the podcast. I just hit a year here. And, so, this whole last year has been about building relationships and trying to create, structure. And so this year is going to be about casting the vision more than I already have and really being able to build consistency. And so all of this stuff is really, really good reminders for me going into this school season. Remind me of the question. Sorry.
No, just basically asking if you had any other practical ideas or if you wanted to elaborate on any of the ones that I said.
um, so some of the notes that I took going before, as well as during, is at the end of the day coming up with a strategy for all that you do. You touched on this a little bit. For me specifically, I look at everything that we do under the lens of outreach, discipleship, and fellowship. As long as it fits one of those things, like if we're reaching out to people, fantastic. If we're discipling, always good. Or even a fellowship, because sometimes you just got to build relationships more. And sometimes even with the students, a good example of that is when I got here. There is was a I don't want to say was there is a clear divide between the different schools. We've got obviously our town that we're in. That's going to be our bigger group, but we also have several schools that are further away, like some of them even 35 minutes away. And so with that comes a natural division because you just spend time with the people that you go to school with a lot. And so when you have several different schools represented, sometimes there can be some level of, the Blackwell kids hang out over here, the Highland kids are over here, the Sweetwater kids are here. And I want to make sure that we're always coming together. It's okay, you know, for the longest time we heard about, eliminate all cliques. Well, the fact of the matter is you just gel with certain people and you may not gel with other people, and that's fine. But how can we unify the students and, through our vision? That's a good way to do that. And so having specific fellowship events that kind of break them out of their bubble, so to speak, like we did over the summer. They have a youth group night at prime time, and so we were really, really intentional to say, hey, let's all bowl together, and then let's all go play mini golf together, and let's like kind of split up a little bit. And we didn't make it obvious that we were doing that for any purpose, but for our leaders, I was like, hey, let's be intentional to try to make sure that everyone's sort of hanging out with everybody at different times. We're going to give them free time to roam with however we want, but let's start together and let's just see what happens. And the cool thing is that we started together, and then when we gave them the freedom to go however they wanted, they didn't separate into their usual groups. They kind of stayed together for the rest of the night. And it was cool how setting that precedent made a difference for us in kind of building that unity together. And so, again, coming up with a strategy that's very clear and consistent is key, especially if you're trying to build a ministry. Is consistency is key, whether you have just a few students or a lot of students. Always being consistent with what you're trying to do. It will happen. It may take some time, it may take several years, but it will happen if you stay consistent. And then just making sure that it does align with those things. And like I said, for us, that's outreach, discipleship, and fellowship.
Yeah, that's awesome. And hey, before we go any farther, I do want to make sure that you have time. Also, you said you were going to go back and explain the 30 aspect
Yeah.
a little bit more. I want to make sure you get that in here.
Yeah, man. You want to do that now?
Sure.
Okay. So this is my favorite principle in all of what we do communication wise. So the 33-30 principle is very simple. It's a 30-second conversation, it's a 3-minute conversation, and a 30-minute conversation. What we found, and I get this from my buddy Doug from Leader Treks, he's been on the podcast. Go check out his episode. I absolutely love this. I've been using it for years. And I think it's important because at the end of the day, we have a lot of really short conversations with people in our church, with students, with our leaders, all the way across the board, whether it's, again, your students and leaders within your youth ministry, but also in conversations on a Sunday morning. So many times I hear, hey, how's the youth group going? Oh, it's good. Cool. What do I do with that? I think it's important to utilize those conversations as strategic as possible, and tailor it to the different types of people that you talk to. Like, my 33-30 conversation might be a little different with our deacons or our elders than maybe just a random person that just says, hey, I'm just curious how things are going with youth ministry. You might be a little bit deeper, but having these conversations matter. So to break those down, a 30-second conversation in its absolute simplest form is, as you know. I always start with as you know. This is a Doug Franklin 101 kind of thing. If you start with as you know, it disarms. Sometimes you're going to have those people that goes, you know by the tone and their body language, they're asking you what's going on with youth ministry because they're ticked off about something, and you're going to have those people and you're going to deal with that. But if you start with as you know, it means that it essentially puts them in a position to go, oh, I'm supposed to know what the youth group is doing. And a lot of times the people that are coming to you asking you don't have a clue what you're doing. And so when you say, as you know, they go, oh, I'm supposed to know this. And if they don't, they immediately feel, you don't want to guilt people, but they kind of, tense up a little bit because they're like, oh, I'm supposed to know this. Then you go into it. So it's like, as you know, our vision is to share the love and grace of Jesus by meeting students where they are. If they don't know that, then they're like, oh man, I'm supposed to know that. Okay, they're disarmed. Now you can have a real conversation with them, and then tell them a story from the last week or two, being honest about like, something cool that happened, or even if it didn't go as well as you had hoped it was, but an organic thing happened. And so just a real simple example of this, I'm just going to make it up on the fly. As you know, the vision of our youth ministry is to share the love and grace of God by meeting students where they are. Last Wednesday night, something really, really cool happened. Our students got together and was talking about something that just really resonated with them at camp. One of our students, maybe you heard this. If you didn't, cool thing. One of our students accepted a call to ministry and is discerning what that looks like for her life. And so some of the students were asking what that looked like for her. And she was able to share some of the things that God had put on her heart at camp. And then we took some time as a youth ministry to pray over her over the school year that God would cultivate that calling in her life this year. It was a really cool opportunity. Wish you could have been there. But yeah, it was a really, really cool opportunity to see in our student, and just to see the students come together and love on her was really, really fun. Man, I would just love to invite you to be a part of that. In whatever way you would like to be. As always, we would love for you to be praying, and name the student. Say, like, I have no problem saying, I'll just throw one of our students out there who wouldn't mind me saying something. Taylor. Taylor accepted a call to music ministry, and is discerning what that looks like for her life. And so would love for you to partner with us praying for Taylor. Now, this is starting to get into the 3-minute side of that. So the 30-second is just, as you know, share the vision, cool story, out. It gives a lot of information without overwhelming them. The 3-minute conversation can be a little bit more specific. Taylor accepted a call to ministry. We would love for you to partner with us in prayer. And man, I would really love if you would just pray, not only for our ministry, but maybe how you can be part of that. Maybe that's being there physically. Maybe that's contributing in a certain way, helping with a meal or something. Be very specific to the people you're talking to. That's your 3-minute conversation. Then you get into your 30-minute conversation. This is a pre-planned scheduled meeting. We're going to sit down over coffee, or we're going to go get lunch, or we're going to, hang out in my office, whatever it might be. And I'm going to prepare more about our vision, more about the conversations, the things that are going on with our youth ministry, where we're headed over the next few months. That's a good way to talk about the theme for the year. And more so how they can partner. This is going to be the type of people that are going to be maybe already invested in your youth ministry, or maybe considering being a part in some way, whether that's teaching or leading, or being a part of like a worship team or media, or whatever it might be. And so this is a great one also, if you get the chance to sit down with a parent or your leadership team, like your church leadership. Maybe y'all have like a business meeting or something like that, and are wanting to know more about your youth ministry. These kind of things can help prepare, and that's where you can throw the visuals, and that's where you can get really creative, put together a presentation. It can be PowerPoint, Keynote, whatever it is, but show them visually what you're doing. Show them pictures, show them videos, like, hey, this was what our summer looked like, and this is like a whole recap. Record your students talking about the things that they're learning and growing, and things that they're excited about. Show these people what's going on. I think use visuals, hugely helpful. But the more prepared you can be, even in the 30-second conversation and the 3-minute conversation, the better people go, man, there's some cool things happening in our youth ministry, and I need to be a part, whether that's actively a part or doing something behind the scenes. But it can be really, really vital. And so being prepared in all seasons means having those quick conversations the little bit more, your 30 seconds, your 3 minutes, your 30 minutes, or longer. But always be prepared for whatever might come.
Yeah, no, and I mean it's important. And if you don't have those parents or those adults in your church asking those questions, find ways to get your youth group out in front of them more. And that can be from youth kids being on the worship team to youth kids helping with children's ministry to youth kids helping serve in different aspects of your church. If you have a night that the youth runs or a fundraiser night, make sure that you don't spend all the time saying, hey, here, we want your money. Be sure to talk about the vision and talk about what you're doing and have students step up and talk about what they've gotten, and make it important and make it something that is um, not only just an opportunity to celebrate what's going on in the ministry, but also a time for you to cast your vision to the rest of the church, for you to really kind of have a PR moment for the youth group, and just what's going on and how God's using different students in the ministry to do great things. And so, just any opportunity you have to get your group in front of the church is going to help that opportunity grow and have leaders and parents ask questions. The other thing I would say is if you're not doing it, you need to do a weekly email. At least have an email that goes out that says, hey, not like, this is what we're doing this week. This is what we're teaching on. These are the different things that our groups are doing. Here's the upcoming events. The more you can communicate and the more open communication you have with your parents, the better. And that's just ultimately going to work towards vision as well. And so, as we close for today, I did want to kind of leave you with a challenge. And so, like I said, if you're listening to this and you don't have a vision, or if you've never thought about casting or like drawing up a vision for your ministry, write your vision statement in 1 to 2 sentences this week. Share it with your leaders, and then find one creative way to display that in your youth space before you meet next time. And like I said, so that might be a poster on the wall, that might be a graphic on your screen, that might be merchandise, whether it's a hat or a t-shirt or something to that nature. Find ways that you can put that in front of your students, and in front of your leaders, so you can continue to push that and make that super well known in your youth group, because it's important. Like I said, we've spent 30 minutes talking about the importance of it, and it's something that really can make or break a youth program, especially when you're trying to lead students and lead volunteers in the same direction. You have to know which way you're going, and that's all the mission statement is. And you casting that vision is just saying, hey guys, we're going this way, follow, kind of thing. So with that being said, that is all the time we have for this episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part. Feel free to share this with your youth pastor friends. Share it with people that might know us or might not know us. Once again, we don't advertise. We don't do anything. All of our advertising is just word of mouth. And so thank you for sharing. Thank you for listening. And until next week, we will see you next time.